Imagine a hero, a real-life superhero, but instead of a cape, he wore a uniform. This is the story of Sergeant Major James Ford. He wasn't just any soldier, he was a legend. For over 20 years, he served our country, traveling to far-off lands and facing dangers most of us can only imagine in movies. He earned medals, each one a shiny reminder of his bravery and dedication. Sergeant Major Ford wasn't just good at his job. He was a leader. Other soldiers looked up to him, trusting his judgment and following his example. He taught them how to be strong, how to be brave, and how to work together as a team. He always put others before himself. Now, after all those years of service, Sergeant Major Ford was finally retiring. The town decided to throw him a special party, a veterans ceremony, to say thank you for everything he had done. They chose the town's beautiful Veterans Memorial, a place of honor, as the location. Little did anyone know this special day would become memorable for all the wrong reasons. This ceremony wasn't just a party, it was a symbol of gratitude, a way for the community to show their appreciation for a man who had given so much. But before the speeches and the celebrations, Sergeant Major Ford would face an unexpected and hurtful challenge. The morning of the ceremony dawned bright and clear, a perfect day to honor a hero. The sun peeked over the horizon, painting the sky with soft shades of pink and gold. A gentle breeze rustled through the leaves of the trees surrounding the Veterans Memorial, carrying the sweet scent of blooming flowers. It was as if nature itself was celebrating Sergeant Major Ford's achievements. Families were already beginning to gather, their faces filled with excitement and anticipation. Children chased pigeons near the memorial's entrance, their laughter echoing through the air. Veterans, dressed in their crisp uniforms, stood tall and proud, exchanging stories of their time in service. The atmosphere was filled with patriotism and respect. The memorial itself looked stunning. Flags from every branch of the military fluttered proudly in the breeze. Freshly laid wreaths adorned the base of the monuments, each one a symbol of gratitude and remembrance. The groundskeepers had worked hard to make sure everything was perfect for this special occasion. A stage had been set up, ready for the speakers who would share stories about Sergeant Major Ford's incredible career. Everything was in place for a beautiful ceremony, a fitting tribute to a man who had dedicated his life to serving his country. It was a day filled with promise, but the peace would soon be shattered. Sergeant Major Ford arrived at the memorial with a sense of pride swelling in his chest. He had chosen to wear his best uniform, the one he usually reserved for special occasions. Each medal gleamed in the sunlight, reflecting years of hard work and sacrifice. He smoothed out any imaginary wrinkles and took a deep breath, ready to enjoy the day. As he walked toward the entrance, he couldn't help but smile. He saw familiar faces in the crowd, old Army buddies, neighbors, and even some of his former students from the local school where he occasionally volunteered. He waved, and they waved back, their smiles mirroring his own. He thought about his family, who were waiting for him inside. His wife, Sarah, had been his rock throughout his career, supporting him through deployments and long training exercises. His children, now grown, had flown in from all over the country to be there for him. He couldn't wait to hug them all. He approached the gate, his heart filled with anticipation. He pictured the speeches, the awards, and the heartfelt thanks. This was a moment he would cherish forever. But as he reached the entrance, his smile faltered. Standing guard was a man with a stern face and cold eyes, and the atmosphere suddenly shifted. The air, once filled with warmth and joy, now felt heavy with an unspoken tension. "Halt!" the guard barked, his voice sharp and unwelcoming. Sergeant Major Ford stopped, surprised by the abrupt command. The guard's eyes narrowed as he looked Sergeant Major Ford up and down, his gaze lingering on the color of his skin. "May I help you?" the guard asked, his tone suggesting he already doubted Sergeant Major Ford belonged there. "Yes, sir," Sergeant Major Ford replied politely. "I'm here for the ceremony." "Ceremony? What ceremony?" the guard questioned, raising an eyebrow. "There's a private event. Are you on the list?" "Yes, sir, I am," Sergeant Major Ford said, trying to keep his voice calm. "I'm Sergeant Major James Ford." They're honoring me today. The guard chuckled, a harsh, disbelieving sound. Honoring you? I don't think so. I haven't seen your name on any list. And besides, he added, his voice dropping to a near whisper, this is for veterans. Sergeant Major Ford's blood began to boil. He had dedicated his life to serving his country, and now he was being denied entry to his own ceremony, simply because of the color of his skin. The disrespect was blatant, the injustice unbearable. He knew he had to remain calm, but the guard's words stung like a slap in the face. This was not the welcome he had expected, and the dream he had of a wonderful day began to crumble. Sir, with all due respect, Sergeant Major Ford began, his voice tight with controlled anger, I am a veteran. I served for over 20 years. These medals, he gestured to his chest, weren't given to me for nothing. This ceremony is for me. The guard remained unmoved, his expression unchanging. I still don't see your name on the list. You'll have to wait here until I can confirm your identity. Sergeant Major Ford felt a surge of frustration. He could see the ceremony starting in the distance. He could hear the faint strains of the national anthem being played. Every second he stood there arguing with this guard was a second he was missing of his own celebration. Is there someone I can talk to who can vouch for me? Sergeant Major Ford asked, trying a different approach. Surely, someone here knows who I am. The guard shrugged. That's not my problem. My job is to make sure only authorized personnel enter these grounds. And right now, you're not authorized. Sergeant Major Ford clenched his fists. He had never felt so humiliated, so disrespected. The pride he had felt earlier that morning had been replaced by a burning anger and a deep sense of injustice. He was being treated like a criminal, not a hero. The frustration was building inside him, threatening to explode. He had to find a way to get past this stubborn guard and into the ceremony before it was too late. The guard's disbelief was like a wall, a solid barrier built on prejudice. He simply couldn't fathom that this black man, standing before him in full military regalia, could possibly be the guest of honor. It defied his preconceived notions, his narrow view of the world. Look, I don't have time for this, the guard said, his voice laced with impatience. If you're not on the list, you're not getting in. Move along before I call security. Sergeant Major Ford's mind raced. He couldn't believe this was happening. He had served his country with honor and distinction, and now he was being treated like a trespasser. The injustice of it all was almost too much to bear. He looked around, desperately searching for someone who could help. He spotted a few familiar faces in the crowd, but they were too far away to hear the conversation. He felt trapped, helpless, and utterly alone. The national anthem ended, and a hush fell over the crowd. Sergeant Major Ford knew the speeches were about to begin. He could almost hear his wife's voice, filled with pride, as she introduced him to the audience. The thought of missing that moment, of being denied the recognition he deserved, filled him with a profound sense of sadness and anger. He had to do something, anything, to break through this wall of disbelief and reclaim his rightful place at the ceremony. But what could he do? The guard seemed determined to keep him out, no matter what. Just when Sergeant Major Ford was about to lose hope, a voice boomed from behind him. What's going on here? Both Sergeant Major Ford and the guard turned to see an older white man, dressed in a faded army uniform, approaching them. The man's face was etched with wrinkles, each one telling a story of battles fought and sacrifices made. He walked with a slight limp, a reminder of his own time in service. This man is trying to enter the ceremony without authorization, the guard said, his voice regaining its earlier sharpness. He's not on the list. The older veteran looked at Sergeant Major Ford, his eyes widening in recognition. James? James Ford? Is that you? Sergeant Major Ford's face lit up with relief. Colonel Thompson. It's good to see you, sir. Colonel Thompson turned to the guard, his expression hardening. Do you have any idea who this is? This is Sergeant Major James Ford. He's a hero. He's the one we're all here to honor today. The guard's face paled. He suddenly seemed much smaller, much less confident. I didn't know, sir, he stammered. His name wasn't on the list I was given. Colonel Thompson shook his head in disbelief. Well, you need to get your facts straight. Now, let's Sergeant Major Ford through. He's got a ceremony to attend. The colonel clapped Sergeant Major Ford on the shoulder. Don't worry, James. We'll get you inside. The arrival of Colonel Thompson marked a turning point. Relief washed over Sergeant Major Ford. Finally, someone believed him. Colonel Thompson, with a stern look at the now mortified guard, escorted Sergeant Major Ford through the gate. The guard, still red-faced, mumbled an apology, but the words felt hollow and insincere. The damage had been done. As they walked towards the seating area, Colonel Thompson explained to those nearby what had happened, his voice filled with indignation. Other veterans, hearing the story, shook their heads in disgust. The news spread quickly through the crowd, and a murmur of disapproval rippled through the audience. Colonel Thompson made sure Sergeant Major Ford was seated in the front row, next to his family. Sarah, his wife, squeezed his hand tightly, her eyes filled with concern. His children offered him reassuring smiles, but Sergeant Major Ford could see the anger simmering beneath the surface. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that, James," Sarah whispered. "It's unbelievable." Sergeant Major Ford forced a smile. "It's okay, honey. I'm here now. That's all that matters." But inside, he was still reeling from the experience. The disrespect, the humiliation, the blatant prejudice, it all weighed heavily on his heart. Even though he was finally inside the ceremony, the shadow of the incident lingered, casting a pall over what should have been a joyous occasion. The incident served as a stark reminder that even after years of service, prejudice could still rear its ugly head. He tried to focus on the positive, on the love and support of his family and friends, but it was difficult to shake off the feeling of being unwelcome, of not belonging. Taking his seat, Sergeant Major Ford tried to focus on the speaker on stage, but his mind kept replaying the scene at the gate. He felt a strange mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief. He was a soldier trained to face adversity, but this felt different. This was an attack on his very identity, a denial of his worth as a veteran and as a human being. He noticed people glancing at him, their faces a mixture of sympathy and outrage. He appreciated their support, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was now the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. He wanted to disappear, to fade into the background, and forget the whole thing ever happened. The speaker droned on, but Sergeant Major Ford couldn't concentrate on the words. He was lost in his own thoughts, wrestling with his emotions. He wondered if the guard had realized the gravity of his actions, if he understood the pain he had caused. He doubted it. The guard's prejudice seemed too deeply ingrained, too much a part of who he was. He glanced at his wife, Sarah, and saw the worry etched on her face. He knew he had to put on a brave face for her sake. He squeezed her hand again, offering her a reassuring smile. He had to remember that he was surrounded by people who loved and respected him, people who valued his service and his sacrifice. He had to let go of the anger and embrace the joy of the occasion, even though it was difficult. The delayed entry and the discomfort it caused threatened to ruin the day, but he wouldn't let it. He would rise above it, just as he had always done. Finally, the moment arrived. The master of ceremonies stepped up to the podium, his voice booming through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests and fellow veterans, we are gathered here today to honor a true American hero, a man who has dedicated his life to serving our country with unwavering courage and devotion." Sergeant Major Ford straightened his posture, trying to project an image of strength and confidence. He knew all eyes were on him, and he didn't want to let anyone down. He had to show them that he wasn't broken by what had happened, that he was still the same Sergeant Major Ford they had always known. The Master of Ceremonies began to recount Sergeant Major Ford's career, highlighting his achievements and his acts of bravery. He spoke of his deployments to dangerous war zones, his leadership skills, and his unwavering commitment to his fellow soldiers. As he listened to the words, Sergeant Major Ford felt a surge of pride, a reminder of all that he had accomplished. He looked at his family again, and this time he saw not just worry, but also admiration. He knew they were proud of him, and that gave him strength. He took a deep breath and prepared himself for the speeches that were to come. He knew this was his moment to shine, to celebrate his career, and to thank all those who had supported him along the way. He wouldn't let the incident at the gate ruin it for him. He would rise above it and embrace the honor that was being bestowed upon him. The ceremony was underway, and it was time to focus on the positive. One by one, dignitaries and fellow veterans took to the stage to share their stories about Sergeant Major Ford. The mayor spoke of his dedication to the community, highlighting his volunteer work with local youth groups. A former commanding officer recounted his bravery under fire, describing him as a natural leader who always put his men first. Each speech was a testament to Sergeant Major Ford's character and his unwavering commitment to service. He listened intently, his heart swelling with gratitude. He had touched so many lives, made such a difference in the world. It was humbling to hear others speak so highly of him. But even as he listened to the praise, the incident at the gate lingered in the back of his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't fully deserve this honor, that he had been tainted by the prejudice he had encountered. He wondered if others were thinking about it too, if they were judging him, questioning his worthiness. He glanced at Colonel Thompson, who gave him a reassuring nod. He knew Colonel Thompson understood what he was going through. He was grateful for his support, for his willingness to stand up for him when it mattered most. He realized that he wasn't alone. He had friends, family, and fellow veterans who believed in him, who valued his service, and who would always have his back. That realization gave him the strength to finally let go of the anger and embrace the moment. He was Sergeant Major James Ford, a decorated veteran, and he deserved to be honored. The speeches were helping him to heal. Finally, it was Sergeant Major Ford's turn to speak. He rose from his seat, his legs feeling a little shaky. He walked to the podium, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked out at the crowd, at the faces of his family, his friends, and his fellow veterans. He took a deep breath and began to speak. "First, I want to thank you all for being here today," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "It means the world to me to have your support." He paused, gathering his thoughts. He knew he couldn't ignore what had happened at the gate. He had to address it, not just for himself, but for everyone who had ever experienced prejudice and discrimination. "Earlier today," he continued, his voice growing stronger, "I was denied entry to this memorial. I was stopped by a guard who didn't believe I belonged here. He questioned my identity, my service, and my worth as a veteran." A hush fell over the crowd. Everyone was listening intently, their faces filled with shock and anger. "I'm not going to pretend that it didn't hurt," Sergeant Major Ford said, his voice cracking with emotion. "It did. It hurt deeply, but I'm not going to let it define me. I'm not going to let it overshadow all the good things that have happened in my life." The crowd was captivated. He paused and took a breath. He knew he had their attention. This was his moment. "We cannot allow prejudice and discrimination to divide us," Sergeant Major Ford continued, his voice resonating with passion. "We are all Americans. We are all veterans. We have all sworn an oath to defend this country, regardless of our race, our religion, or our background." He paused, looking out at the crowd. He could see tears in some eyes, anger in others. He knew he was touching people's hearts. "I don't blame that guard," he said, his voice softening. "I believe he was simply ignorant. He didn't understand the sacrifices that Black veterans have made for this country. He didn't understand that we are just as deserving of respect and honor as anyone else. But we can't let ignorance win," he continued. "We have to educate people. We have to show them that prejudice is wrong. We have to teach them to love and accept one another, regardless of their differences." He paused again, taking a deep breath. "I hope that one day we will live in a world where incidents like this never happen again. A world where everyone is treated with respect and dignity. A world where we are all judged by the content of our character, not the color of our skin." He finished his speech with a call for unity and understanding, urging everyone to work together to create a more just and equitable society. His words hung in the air, inspiring hope and a renewed sense of purpose. The crowd erupted in applause, a standing ovation for a man who had overcome adversity and emerged stronger than ever. This was a speech they would never forget. Immediately following Sergeant Major Ford's speech, the chairman of the Veterans Memorial Board took to the podium, his face etched with remorse. He spoke with a somber tone, acknowledging the grave mistake that had been made. On behalf of the entire Veterans Memorial Board, he began, I offer my sincerest and deepest apologies to Sergeant Major James Ford for the unacceptable treatment he received earlier today. He paused, his voice filled with sincerity. There is no excuse for what happened. It was a failure on our part, a failure to uphold the values of respect, equality, and inclusion that this memorial stands for. He announced that the Guard had been immediately suspended pending a full investigation. He also pledged to implement mandatory diversity and sensitivity training for all memorial staff and volunteers to prevent such incidents from happening again. We are committed to ensuring that this memorial is a welcoming and inclusive space for all veterans, regardless of their race, their background, or their beliefs, he said. We will learn from this mistake, and we will do better. He then turned to Sergeant Major Ford, his eyes filled with genuine regret. Sergeant Major Ford, your service and sacrifice to this country are deeply appreciated. You deserve to be honored, and we are truly sorry that we failed to provide you with the respect you deserve. We hope that you can find it in your heart to forgive us. The apology was met with a mixture of emotions. Some felt it was sincere and heartfelt, while others felt it was too little, too late. But everyone agreed that it was a necessary step in the healing process. In the days following the ceremony, Sergeant Major Ford was overwhelmed by the outpouring of support from the community and fellow veterans. Phone calls, emails, and letters poured in, expressing outrage at the Guard's actions and offering words of encouragement and solidarity. Local businesses displayed signs in their windows, proclaiming, "We stand with Sergeant Major Ford." Children wrote him heartfelt letters, thanking him for his service and vowing to fight against prejudice and discrimination. Fellow veterans organized a rally in his honor, marching through the streets with signs and banners, chanting his name and celebrating his achievements. The story spread like wildfire on social media, sparking a national conversation about race, prejudice, and respect for veterans. People from all walks of life shared their own stories of discrimination and offered their support to Sergeant Major Ford. He was invited to speak at schools, churches, and community organizations, sharing his story and inspiring others to stand up for what is right. He became a symbol of hope, a beacon of light in a world often darkened by prejudice and hatred. The community rallied around him, determined to show him that he was valued, respected, and loved. They organized potlucks, fundraisers, and other events to show their appreciation for his service and his sacrifice. Sergeant Major Ford was deeply moved by the outpouring of support. It helped him to heal from the pain of the incident and to reaffirm his belief in the goodness of humanity. He knew that he wasn't alone in this fight, and that gave him strength to continue moving forward. The Guard's actions did not go unpunished. After a thorough investigation, he was officially terminated from his position at the Veterans Memorial. The board determined that his behavior was not only discriminatory, but also a violation of the memorial's code of conduct. The Guard's dismissal sent a clear message that prejudice and discrimination would not be tolerated. It was a reminder that everyone is accountable for their actions, regardless of their position or authority. In addition to losing his job, the Guard also faced public scrutiny and condemnation. His name and photo were widely circulated in the media, and he became the target of online criticism and ridicule. Many people called for him to be held accountable for his actions and to undergo sensitivity training. The incident served as a wake-up call for the community, prompting a renewed focus on diversity, inclusion, and respect. Local leaders organized town hall meetings to discuss ways to combat prejudice and discrimination. Schools implemented new programs to teach children about tolerance and understanding. The Guard's repercussions highlighted the importance of accountability and the need to create a culture of respect and inclusion. It was a reminder that everyone has a role to play in fighting against prejudice and discrimination, and that no one is above the law. The consequences he faced sent a strong message. Hate has no place in our society. In the quiet moments, when the phone stopped ringing and the crowds dispersed, Sergeant Major Ford found himself reflecting on the entire experience. He thought about the Guard, about his ignorance and prejudice, He wondered what had led him to believe that a black man couldn't be a decorated veteran. He thought about Colonel Thompson, about his unwavering support and his willingness to stand up for what was right. He was grateful for his friendship and his guidance. He thought about his family, about their love and their encouragement. He knew he couldn't have gotten through this without them. He realized that this incident, as painful as it was, had presented him with an opportunity to educate, to inspire, and to make a difference. He decided to use his platform to speak out against prejudice and discrimination, to advocate for equality and inclusion, and to share his story with the world. He began volunteering at local schools, teaching children about the importance of diversity and respect. He spoke at community events, sharing his experiences and urging others to stand up for what is right. He wrote articles and gave interviews, sharing his message with a wider audience. Sergeant Major Ford transformed a moment of pain and humiliation into a powerful teaching moment. He used his experience to promote understanding, too. The incident at the Veterans Memorial sparked widespread calls for improved training and awareness to prevent similar incidents from happening in the future. Many people argued that the Guard's actions were a result of ignorance and a lack of understanding about diversity and inclusion. Veterans groups and civil rights organizations called for mandatory diversity and sensitivity training for all memorial staff and volunteers, as well as for law enforcement officers and other public servants. They argued that such training would help to raise awareness about prejudice and discrimination and to promote respect and understanding. Some people also called for changes to the way veterans are identified and recognized. They suggested that veterans should be issued identification cards that clearly indicate their status, regardless of their race or background. They also proposed creating a national database of veterans that could be easily accessed by memorial staff and law enforcement officers. The calls for change were met with widespread support from the community. Local leaders pledged to work with veterans groups and civil rights organizations to implement new training programs and policies. Schools added diversity and inclusion to their curriculum, teaching children about the importance of respecting one another's differences. The incident at the Veterans Memorial became a catalyst for positive change, prompting a renewed focus on diversity, inclusion, and respect. It was a reminder that we all have a role to play in fighting against prejudice and discrimination, and that we must. Sergeant Major James Ford's legacy extended far beyond his military service. He became a symbol of resilience, a testament to the human spirit's ability to overcome adversity. He showed the world that even in the face of prejudice and discrimination, it is possible to rise above hate and to make a positive difference. His advocacy for equality and inclusion inspired countless others to stand up for what is right. He empowered people to speak out against injustice and to work towards creating a more just and equitable society. He became a mentor to young people, guiding them and inspiring them to pursue their dreams. He taught them the importance of education, hard work, and perseverance. He showed them that anything is possible if you set your mind to it. Sergeant Major Ford's story became a part of the community's history, a reminder of the challenges they had faced and the progress they had made. His name was etched on monuments and buildings, and his story was told in books and movies. He was honored with awards and accolades, but he never forgot his humble beginnings. He remained grounded and committed to serving others. He used his platform to. The Veterans Memorial, once the site of a painful incident, underwent a transformation. The board made a renewed commitment to diversity, inclusion, and respect for all veterans, regardless of their race, background, or beliefs. They implemented mandatory diversity and sensitivity training for all staff and volunteers, ensuring that everyone understood the importance of treating all veterans with dignity and respect. They created new programs to celebrate the contributions of veterans from diverse backgrounds, highlighting their stories and their achievements. They partnered with local community organizations to promote diversity and inclusion in the wider community. They hosted events and workshops to educate people about the importance of respecting one another's differences. The memorial became a symbol of hope, a place where all veterans could feel welcome and valued. It became a place where people could come together to learn from one another and to celebrate the diversity of the American experience. The memorial also established a scholarship fund in Sergeant Major Ford's name, providing financial assistance to students from diverse backgrounds who were pursuing careers in public service. The scholarship was a testament to Sergeant Major Ford's commitment to education and his desire to make a positive difference in the world. The transformation was complete. The memorial was now a place of honor, respect, and inclusion for all. Sergeant Major James Ford became more than just a veteran. He became a beacon of hope in the ongoing struggle for racial equality and justice. His story resonated with people from all walks of life, inspiring them to stand up against prejudice and discrimination. He showed the world that even in the face of adversity, it is possible to rise above hate and to make a positive difference. He demonstrated the power of resilience, the importance of forgiveness, and the transformative potential of education. His legacy lived on through the countless lives he touched, the young people he mentored, and the communities he inspired. His story was a reminder that the fight for equality is far from over, but that progress is possible if we all work together. He continued to speak out against injustice, to advocate for change, and to share his message of hope with the world. He traveled the country, speaking at schools, churches, and community organizations, urging people to embrace diversity, to celebrate inclusion, and to stand up for what is right. Sergeant Major James Ford remained a symbol of hope and progress, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always light to be found. His story serves as an inspiration to us all, encouraging us to continue the fight for a more just and equitable world, where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. His life was a testament to the power of the human spirit, and his legacy will continue to inspire generations to come.